So, Dee Rees, your film Mudbound has received really strong reviews from critics and audiences who have seen it so far. Take us back to the beginning. When did you first become aware of this material, and what attracted it? What attracted you to it?
Totally, yeah. So this journey for me started in maybe like the summer of 2015. A producer named Cassie Nelways brought me the script. It's written by a talented writer named Virgil Williams. And so I read Virgil's script, and I thought there was a lot of there, and what prompted me to go back and read the book by Hilary Jordan and see what else I could mine. And the thing I was struck by in Hilary's writing were the internal monologues. And I always think that the things that people say to themselves is more revealing and interesting than the things they'll say to other people. So I like that aspect of it, and also like the multiple like points of view. And so the idea of telling a story with these unreliable narrators, was interesting for me. And so, when I rewrote the script, my goal was to make the Jackson family rounded and full, and to make sure, in the telling of it, this is a story of about two families, one not just there to serve the other. And so it was, it just really gives us context. And so by the second act, when these two sons meet, we really we feel the weight of this meeting, and we feel the kind of tension of this friendship, and that it's gonna like lead us like, in a place that's going to be, dangerous. And so I rewrote it. We shot summer 2016. We only had like 29 days to shoot this film. We shot, it was like 2 hours, I think, east of New Orleans, but we were in a plantation country like Vacherie, St. Charles Parish. And ironically, like 2 of those days, we got like rained out. So we shot like actual like sugar plantation. So we had those 26 days there. Then we had 2 days in Budapest, Hungary, where we shot the European village scenes and Ronzel's tank battles. And then we had a day in Long Island at a World War II museum where we shot an actual B-25 plane. So really quick process, only like 5 weeks to prep, 29 days to shoot. And then I mean, for all the actors, everybody kind of brought their own personal histories to the story, and just in the logistics of it, everyone was very present, stayed on set. There are no comfy trailers to run back to, and I feel like that comes across on the screen, just the craft of it. So yeah.
I wanted to talk about, you mentioned the multiple characters, and you do have multiple character arcs within this story. So can you talk a little bit about juggling all of these different people and all of their different arcs into one narrative?
Absolutely, yeah. So performance-wise, so the film begins with these two brothers, Jamie and Henry. And so we meet them in a moment of distrust. And it's like, what is this distrust between these two brothers? And we kind of get the sense that there's something unspoken between them. And then they kind of lead us to Laura. And Laura, takes us back in time to when she first meets Henry. And so it's like they kind of hand each other off. And, the Laura and Henry relationship is like a marriage of convenience in a way. Laura he's not sweeping her off her feet, but by the standards, she's an old maid, and like she needs to marry this guy to be happy. And so Laura marries Henry. Then Henry takes us back to the land. Henry has a sense of disinheritance. He feels like he's not been given the land that was his birthright, so he grabs this parcel. And the title Mudbound is actually Laura's kind of like ironic, under her breath name for the place. Like Henry thinks of this place as Fairfields. And so then we have this kind of marriage that is like hanging on. And then we meet the Jackson family, who are shared tenants initially, who work on the land. And then the father, Hap Jackson, like breaks his leg, and then they end up, going into debt and becoming like sharecroppers. So we watch this Jackson family descend, and also when we first meet them, we're meeting them like when their son is going off to war, and so we're seeing kind of like the force, like macro and like personal, are like shifting like the fortunes like of this family. And so then the sons come home from war, and that kind of kicks off the second act, where these two sons almost become more brothers than the brothers we met at the beginning of the story. Like Ronzel and Jamie have a brotherhood in a way that Jamie and his own blood brother Henry don't quite have. And this friendship kind of takes us through the end of the story, like how there's a trust building here, there's like a trauma here, like these guys are connected by being misunderstood. Like they both kind of stepped outside the bubble of Mississippi, they fought for the country, and they've come back and realized kind of like the hypocrisy of like what they're fighting for. And then, and we see like the force is kind of pulling on them, like Pappy, who's, Henry and Jamie's father, is like pulling at Jamie to like not be in this friendship, is poking him into what his idea of white manhood is. And we have Laura's pulling at Henry, like needing more from him as a husband. And then you have like Ronzel, and Jamie, having this like defiant friendship no matter what. And meanwhile, Hap Jackson and Florence Jackson, like they want their son to be safe, and they recognize this relationship as a danger to their stability and to their son's life. frankly. And so, it creates a story where there's so many arcs, there's so many lines between each of the characters, and like two characters moving closer comes at the expense of a character moving further from another. And so I love the constant tug and like the elasticity of relationships in the story. And throughout the film, you get this really dense kind of character study.
And I mean, you're able to explore a lot of big themes within the film as well. I mean, race is obviously one of them, issues of class as well. I mean, the ways in which on the surface we're different, but underneath we're the same, and we are all in some ways discriminated against. Could you talk a bit about that?
I wouldn't equivalize like race and class because
Right. I mean,
there's like a
yeah.
so it's in the story like there's a poor white family like the Atwood family, and it's important to bring them forward from the book because it shows that these poor white people were sharecroppers, and it shows that like Laura, it triangulates the women. Like Laura is uncomfortable with Vera Atwood as she's uncomfortable with Florence. But at the end of the day, Vera Atwood can sit across from Laura with a cup of coffee with her dirty feet on the rug, and like have a conversation with her. So it just complicates, and there's a moment where Vera Atwood comes to Laura for help, and Laura doesn't help her. And editorially we kind of tie, Laura's kind of misfortune to her failure to help this other woman. And then Laura does help Florence in this other way. So I just think it like layers it, and it kind of like shows the amount of discomfort, and it kind of exposes like all the silences, in the film. I wanted to explore whiteness as currency. They all have it, they spin it differently. So we see how Pappy flaunts his. He's going to throw it in your face and call you names. Henry's not going to call you names, but he still expects everything to be sacrificed in the name of commerce. He'll say, okay, get on your broken leg and go into debt and like fix this, like don't heal. Whereas Laura kind of barters with her. She's willing to like give things away in order to get what she needs. And then Jamie tries to burn his. He tries to pretend like he doesn't have any currency, which is equally dangerous because it ends up putting Ronzo's life at risk. And so they're all spinning different. And then Vera Atwood, who has like the least of her white currency, but she's still able to like make this ask. She's able to have proximity in this different way. And so it's just each of the characters kind of silences about these truths. Everyone knows what's happening, but no one's quite naming it. And for me, this film is also about like inheritance. To get beyond the surface reading of race, it's about inheritance, about questioning what we've been given, like not just like how we've come by land or how we've come by labor, but how we've come by the ideas that we have, and how we can like subconsciously have been inheriting things, and we're subconsciously like passing them on, and like how do you become aware of that? And I think Jamie is like, in Ronzel are kind of like the avatars for that consciousness in a way. Like Jamie comes aware of his consciousness because he's saved by a red-tailed pilot, and he's aware of like all the ideas he had before, aren't true. And so slowly we see like this porousness to the narrative, like this porousness of ideas. The porousness is there in the set design of spaces. And so we see the characters constantly trying to keep the outside out and the inside in, and eventually relenting, realizing that they can't.
Like you said, you had a very short amount of time to shoot this. You've created a lot of scope within the film, very limited means. Can you talk a bit about some of the ways in which you were able to create a sense of scope within this film on a short schedule and a tight budget?
Absolutely. So starting with like the farm, even the farm itself was like a big set, and like one of the things, so David Bomba was the production designer, and one of the things that we were trying to demonstrate is like this interconnectedness of the families. And so just inciting like the McCallan house within view of the Jackson house, but it's like at a distance, and where we put like the stables, like all those were very kind of calculated moves, and in terms of how to show like the expanse of this landscape and how it kind of dwarfs the homes and dwarfs the people, but they're still all connected. So like that was one sense of scope, just like the farm itself. And then secondly, I'd say like with the war scene, so we shot 2 days in Budapest, Hungary, and we, Rachel Morrison was my DP, and she was amazing. And we literally shot a tank scene before lunch. Like usually tank battles, you get like 2 days for that. We had to shoot this tank scene before lunch, so we could reuse those same tanks in like the European village scene where Ronzel's like riding home and just kind of like on a march. And then we shot like on the second day in Budapest, we shot like the end of the movie where Ronzo goes to like find his son. And then we had a day, it was a different DP, Richard Rutkowski, we shot out in a World War II museum. And like finding this B-25 plane was like a hard thing to do because it's a museum piece. And so, we were restricting what we could do inside it. And so it's a dance between visual effects and special effects in terms of like, creating this bloody battle scene. So we did a lot of VFX for those scenes where we're able to bring in like the pilot of like the red-tailed plane and put him up on a scaffolding, kind of move him outside the window, and VFX could build a plane around him, and Jamie's in like a real plane. So it was a real collaboration, and making sure that we had authenticity, but also scale, and also I think there's like a lot of scale just in like the relationships, like we're spanning time. We're starting like before the war, and then ending, like 6 years, kind of like later when Ronzo goes to find his son. So like the time in this film is definitely like felt and as a character, and we see these people changing as we move through time.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk a bit about the distribution model of this film. I mean, it's being distributed on Netflix and in select theaters. Can you talk a little bit? You are someone who comes from the independent film world with your film Pariah. So can you talk a bit about the benefits of this release model?
Absolutely. So like Netflix is a savior. Like if not for them, this film wouldn't be seen. Like studios aren't taking on riskier fare these days. And so the fact that Ted Sarandos had the vision and wanted to get this story told, like just speaks to the quality of the filmmaking there. I think Netflix is a place for auteurs and for risk taking. And so for this film, like when you think about it, it's going to be seen simultaneously in more than 100 countries. And so you have this global audience, and people can have their choice of how they want to see it, but I liken it's like ebooks. It's like if you read Tolstoy on a Kindle and you read it on a paperback or you read it in a hardback, it's still like literature. And in that same way, Mudbound is cinema, no matter the format the audience chooses to view it in. And I just think that also the thing that I really thought about just now is that, it's not like a 6-week run. It's not a 12-week run. Premiering on Netflix means it's a forever run. Like you have this infinitely available film anytime, day or night, and it's not going to end, and it's like that's the exciting thing for me as a filmmaker. You want your work to be seen. And I know from my experience with Pariah, like more people saw Pariah on Netflix and were equally affected by it than ever saw it when it was in the theaters with Focus Features. So I'm just really aware of like meeting the audience where they are and being accessible. And like as a kid, I remember like we used to tape movies off the TV, because we weren't going to the movies like all the time. Yeah, you get the VCR out and you had to wait till it came on, the movie of the week. And so I just feel like this makes this story that's so critical and so important, like accessible to everyone. Like you don't have to like spend a bunch of money on popcorn, gas. You don't even have to get dressed. You can watch it and watch it with your family, watch it with friends, and just experience it like at your own pace. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Why tell this story today?
Yeah, I think Mudbound, because Mudbound is about, not being able to go back home. That's evergreen. Mudbound is about citizenship. That's an evergreen question, who's American, who's not. I mean, like specifically, like Ronzel goes overseas and is more American when he's walking down a German street than he is walking down his own hometown street. And Mudbound is about, the ways in which, family can inadvertently like drown you. And so I think those are things that constantly, we're struggling with, as individuals and as a country. And as a country, I'd say the bigger reason is that, we have not really addressed our national history. And so what Mudbound challenged you to do is like, okay, if you can't take on our national history, we can certainly each look at our personal histories. Like if I can go 3 grandmothers back and find a slave, and somebody else can go three grandmothers back and find a slave owner. Or if your family came over to the country after that period, then that means that you have an immigrant story. That means that, if your grandfather is able to come with $2 in his pocket and make a way, then we should be able to understand why someone, should be able to come over now with $2 in their pocket and like make a way. And what are the doorways that were open to them and how do we keep those doors open? So I think that Mudbound is about us. It's about who we are. It's about, I think everything that's happening in our country, like lets us know that we've always been this way. This is not new. And this is a moment where we can decide to kind of change that. And if we talk about our inheritance and how we're going to use it, how we're going to spend it going forward.
Real quick before we go, you're working on your next film, on Civil War. What can you tell us about that project?
I can say that Carey Mulligan is starring as Gloria Steinem, and Carey is an amazing actress. I'm really excited to take on this issue. And it's like, again, like I'm going to put together another ensemble cast with lots of tangled up, interesting, elastic relationships. And that's just what excites me as a director: actors, relationships, characters. Like that's where I begin. So I'm really excited to take it on with Film Nation.
I know you've got to go. I wish we had more time because there's a lot to talk about with this movie. But it's a great film, and congratulations on it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching. Thanks.
Thank you.